Have you ever wondered what it would be like to see the future? Well, I'm very saddened to inform you that it's still an impossible feat. However, there is a way we can come pretty close. My name is Michelle Park, and for this year my topic is actuarial science. I know many people would be like, what is that? Well, first of all, same, and actuaries basically predict the future. And they have to use critical thinking to analyze risk, primarily in insurance, and have a creative brain to have the flexibility to adapt to different situations. As my mentor said, actuarial science is 10% math and 90% art. First, a little bit about me. I'm a member of the Wind Symphony, the Jazz Band, and the Lone Star Youth Wind, so you can tell I'm pretty involved in band, and I love music a lot. From this, that's something I drew for Rice University's application, and I drew a saxophone with wings, so it kind of represents freedom, and I like music because it gives me freedom in a way. And I also like art and drawing, and I used to be that kid who would always draw on the tests in elementary school, and that's something that I also drew. And my dad is an engineer and my mom's an accountant, so because my dad's an engineer, that's why I wanted to pick my first topic, which was biomedical engineering. But as I researched a little bit about that, I discovered that engineering is not for me. So I was like, I need to figure out something else that I want to do. So this is part of why I wanted to join ISM, because I never liked having to do busy work for the sake of needing another daily grade, or wasting class time, or having to do a project just to fulfill like a quiz grade requirement. And in ISM, we get to research what interests us and learn professionalism, gain confidence in ourselves, and so much more, something we couldn't have done in any other course. And I chose this topic because I switched my topic. I needed to find something else that interested me, and I remembered reading about actuarial science sometime on the internet a few years ago, and I was like, that sounds interesting, I want to give it a try. My quote is, life isn't about waiting for the storm to pass, it's about learning to dance in the rain. And this exemplifies my views on why I wanted to join ISM. You can't wait for opportunities to come to you. You have to take control of your life and reach for every opportunity. This is why I think it's a really good thing to step outside of your comfort zone, because I know it will make me better, even though I might be really scared to do it. So for my research, my first research topic was insurance basics. So the first bullet says, like, the decreasing marginal utility of money, so which is basically, as you get more money, the more useless it becomes. So when you only have a little bit of money, all of that is really valuable, but once you get extraneous money, then it's not very valuable anymore, because you're just adding more luxury items instead of getting the necessities. So my next bullet is the law of large numbers, which basically says, as you get more population and more more policies in this case, because it's insurance, then the more stable the data is, there's less variability. So basically, insuring more people is better. So you want to sell as many policies as possible, so like a catastrophe like a hurricane or tornado doesn't wipe out your entire company. My next topic is the UNT trip, and in this trip I learned that professors can actually be laid back and not strict, because the first class I went to, which was a finance class, the professor said he would drop the lowest exam grade, like an exam grade, which is a major grade. So I was like, whoa. And then my second class, I went to a business leadership ethics class, and we learned about the stock market, frauds and scams, and executive pay, which is interesting because I didn't really know much about the stock market before, and I didn't know that people could manipulate it so easily for their own gains. And we learned about the Wolf of Wall Street and like all these big bad bosses that like manipulated the market and manipulated other people and customers to get a lot of money for themselves. And I also learned that CEOs get paid a ton, and they might not actually do that much, but their salary is like set aside to be paid. And I also learned that college students are basically a more dead version of high school students, because when I walked into the classroom, they were all asleep, they were on their laptops, but they were like kind of dozing off and not paying attention to the screen. So yeah. And my next topic of research was fire, marine, and liability insurance. And I learned that fire damage insurance covers more than just fire. It was really interesting because there was stuff like hail, lightning, like hurricanes, tornadoes covered under fire insurance, which was really interesting to me because I didn't know that. And I also learned that hail is a big insurance company killer, especially in Texas, because it seems like such a little thing. Like, it's not going to like destroy your house or anything, like it's not going to really destroy your car. It'll still be usable, but there will still be damage. But for insurance companies, it's a really big thing, because once there's a hailstorm and your car is out in the open, then that's a ton of damages they have to pay, even if it's just like a little bit for each person. And I learned that there's a lot more catastrophe coverages, like I mentioned, under fire damage, which was really cool, because like most catastrophes, unlike hail, are like high severity and low frequency, but it can affect, depending on the location, it can affect the insurance companies a ton. And one interesting thing that I learned was marine insurance, which covers the trucking industry as well as cargo ship coverage, which I didn't know. And one question I had about this was, does it cover passenger ships as well as cargo ships, or is it just cargo ships under marine insurance? And a few things that I learned from my mentor was that a claims adjuster has to go to every claim, and they have to say the day, how much should be set aside for each claim, like how much reserve should be set aside, and whether it's a valid claim for insurance. And I also learned that actuaries are basically paid to be wrong. My mentor was like, this is the only profession where you can be wrong and still get paid a ton of money. And I learned about incurred losses, which are losses incurred by an insurance company by the payment and evaluation of claims, and ultimate loss, which is how much is ultimately spent on a claim. And also the IBNR, which is incurred but not reported, which refers to reserves that are established for claims and or events that have happened, but they haven't been reported yet. Because a lot of people like to procrastinate on like reporting their claims. So by the end of the year, they're expecting claims that haven't been reported yet to be like reported. So they have to set aside in advance so they're not rushing at the end of the year to get all that paid off. And next, on to my interviews. And my first interview was with Mrs. Jackie Lee, and she's a health actuary and is a fellow. And she first told me about the two main types of actuaries, which is property and casualty and life and health. And she told me that they basically have two jobs, which is pricing and reserves. Pricing is like setting the price and the rates for like any kind of policy. So this is basically the premium you have to pay. And then reserves are how much is set aside. So for example, if like a young woman in say like her early 20s would go get an insurance policy, they'd have to take into account that she's married or something, and then she might be likely to have a child, so they have to set aside reserves to accommodate for that. And she told me about consulting versus insurance, and she said consulting is more flexible, they might have more time, but they're like less time set aside specifically for studying. And she said if an insurance company doesn't pay you to have paid study time, then they're probably not going to accommodate you very well. And then she also said that insurance companies in general, like you might be on a higher or a more packed schedule, and it's more routine. She said that her job is very flexible and she has good job security, and she also said if she were to quit her job right now, she'd be able to call any other company in like across the US and find a job in a month. And she also said that you need a good work ethic for exams, which is something that I need to work on because my work ethic is not the best. And Mrs. Lee referred me to two other people, and one of which was Mr. Campbell, and he's my mentor currently, and he was a self-proclaimed band nerd like me, which is what first drew me to him and made me feel really comfortable in it because we had a common ground. So he first started off with computer science, and he didn't like it that much because it was really, he said it was boring, and like debugging took a lot of effort, and he didn't want to do all this little like maintenance stuff. It bored him to death. So he began searching for a profession with a barrier to entry, and he found actuarial science because he didn't have to go through school again. All he had to do was take a bunch of exams. And what's crazy about him is that he actually took both routes of exams. So he did both property and casualty, and as well as life and health. So that's overall 14 different exams that he had to take, which is crazy because they're all supposed to be really difficult. He said you can major in whatever you want, including gerbil nutrition, and it didn't matter what you majored in as long as you filled your requirements and took all your exams. in relation to his field of specialty, he said property and casualty is a free-for-all. So unlike life and health, which deal specifically with health insurance or life insurance, this covers a lot more because property can be anything, like house, like homeowners insurance or auto insurance, or anything that can be considered property. My next interview was with Mrs. Allen, and she is a life actuary, and she said life insurance is really formulaic and it requires a lot of tables in Excel. It's basically insuring your own death, and people who get life insurance are separated into risk classes. So say a smoker who's in poor health would be placed at the highest risk class, so their premiums would be higher and their rates would be higher. And she said one difficult thing about her job is there's always an influx of new information. So she has to learn new things to keep up, and it's always a learning process. My next interview was with Mr. Ray Garcia, and he's actually an insurance agent, not an actuary. And he told me that the actual companies don't write policies for customers, and they write the policies for the customers, but they don't answer claims. So they're the one who sell the product, but they don't actually get the claims from their customers. That's the actual insurance company. It's the actual insurance company that does that. And he told me about the different types of insurance they have to be licensed in, such as auto insurance, homeowners insurance, life insurance, and health insurance. And they have to be certified for each different kind in order to be able to sell the policies. And one important thing that he said is being successful is enjoying what you do. And he really enjoys his job because he loves helping people and getting people to get the best policies. And he said his office was at the front of the building because he wanted to be the first to greet his customers, and I thought that was a really cool thing. My next interview was with Mr. Chris Goodman, and he is a pension actuary. And pensions is basically insuring your retirement. It's very calculation intensive, and it's really easily subject to the law. So any changes in policies by the government can cause their entire way they work to change. And any kind of legislation would change the way they work. There's been several laws that changed it already in the past, over the course of his career. It's very fast-paced, and again, he said the exams are hard. And my sixth and final interview was with Mr. Dustin Smith, and I met him at a Starbucks after a few mishaps with getting there. And he's a life actuary who works for Torchmark, and he primarily works with product development and models, and he uses Excel a lot. He had to make his own calculator using Excel. And again, he said exams are hard, but he said he would recommend this field to anyone who really wants to do it, and he enjoys what he does. And why did I pick Mr. Campbell as my mentor? Well, mainly because he was sociable and laid back. And when I first walked into his office, he was playing with a slinky, and he had a baseball bat in his other hand, hitting this ball. And I was like, hi. And when we first got talking, he said he was in band, so I could easily relate to his experiences, so I felt really comfortable around him. And he said he played the clarinet, and he also marched. He marched both clarinet and the tenors, which is weird, but I was like, that's cool. I like you already. And he also is a really big DCI fan. So for my original work, I was really confused on where should I even start. I didn't know what to do. I barely know anything about my topic. So when I went to my mentor visits, we threw around a lot of ideas on what I could do. And whenever I brought anything up, it was shot down immediately because he was like, that's not really what we do. So I had a lot of misconceptions about it going in. But eventually we figured out something that could work, and my concept was a musical instrument insurance policy. So this is basically the pricing part of actuaries. So I figured that people are really clumsy, and I'm clumsy, and because a huge component of actuarial science is insurance, I decided to make this and aim it at middle and high school band students. Over the course of my middle school band years and my marching band career, I've seen instruments damaged on an almost weekly basis. I've tripped over props. My parents have picked up my case, and it's not closed, and it just falls on the floor and it breaks. I've hit it on bleachers, I've hit it on corners, and all this stuff. So the damages got to the point where I had to borrow someone else's saxophone to march with for the season. When I went to Music and Arts and took my horn in, they were like, it's going to be $700 to fix your horn. And I was like, I can't do that. So my goal was to create an insurance policy that will accurately cover a variety of different instruments, as well as different severities of damage, so that it's not as much of a financial burden. So to start off with, I surveyed a bunch of band kids, and I had to email people from different schools so they could get their info in. And I basically asked, how many years have you been in band, and how many times have you gotten your instrument repaired, and what do you play? So as you can see, this was kind of a mess of a spreadsheet, because people would put different things. Like, instead of putting a numeral, they'd put letters or stuff like this. I don't know what that is. That was kind of rough. And then when people don't put in like an actual value, then it gives me that. So I had to go in and fix every single one of the spreadsheets that didn't give me a good value. So if it had like more than one instrument, I had to split them into 2 columns so I could get a frequency for each instrument. So when I fixed it, it ended up looking more like this. And this took me around 3 hours to do. And it was crazy. And then for my severity data, I went to a bunch of different music repair websites and got data. Keep in mind, like, this is just playing condition only. I wanted to do different severities, but it didn't give me really consistent data across, so I just decided to do playing condition, which is, for this, it's the maximum amount of money you have to pay to get it to playing condition. So for my actual original work, I found the premiums by multiplying the severity and the frequencies I got for each instrument. And this is the prices that I got. And the frequency is basically how many times a person takes in their instrument to get repaired. And the severity is the max amount of money charged to get an instrument to playing condition. Most damages will cost less, because this is just the maximum, so I reduced the prices across the board so it would be more manageable to get. And in conclusion, I'm not quite sure about this field, but as a result of my journey in ISOM so far, I've grown so much in confidence and professionalism, so I'm really glad I chose to take this class. I don't think I'll choose to pursue this career in the future, but going through this whole process has been a great learning experience, and I'm very grateful to my mentor for taking a lot of effort into teaching this field to a complete beginner. And for the next step in my journey, I look forward to figuring out what to do for my final product. Thank you all for listening.
I have a question.
What?